Right now on CBS News Bay Area, it is 6:30. President Biden is in the United Kingdom this morning, where he just met with King Charles at Windsor Castle. He also met earlier today with the British Prime Minister at 10 Downing Street. Tomorrow, the president heads to a high-stakes NATO summit where the war in Ukraine is likely to be at the top of the agenda. Tina Kraus joins us from London with more on the start of the president's 5-day trip. Tina, what can you tell us about this trip?
Hey, Amanda. Well, it's a busy day for President Biden, who flew into London last night. He's on this 5-day trip to Europe, as you said. Well, he took the presidential limo into the British capital this morning for a meeting with the Prime Minister before receiving a royal salute and a spot of tea this afternoon with the King in Windsor. President Biden began his first full day in London at 10 Downing Street, calling the U.S.-UK relationship rock solid as he talked with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. It's the 6th time the leaders have met, and their shared support for Ukraine likely dominated discussions, along with the president's controversial decision to provide cluster bombs to Ukraine in their war against Russia. The munitions are banned by more than 100 countries, including the UK. But the U.S. says Ukraine needs the canisters filled with small bombs that can be dropped over a wide area.
I think they needed them. The Ukrainians are running out of ammunition.
Politics gave way to some pomp later as President Biden met with King Charles for the first time since his crowning. The two had tea and talked about climate issues, including how to encourage companies to boost clean energy efforts. Then it was back in the air for the president with a flight to Lithuania's capital city for the annual NATO summit. Ukraine is pressing to become a member of the military alliance, but President Biden says the war must end before Ukraine is admitted, or all members could be dragged into conflict with Russia. Still, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he wants a guarantee, not just that the door is open, he says, but that Ukraine will be let through it. Amanda, all of NATO recognizes the Ukrainian offensive is quickly running out of ammunition. And this NATO summit coming up, well, there will be a lot to talk about.
Yeah, especially, Tina, these controversial cluster bombs that the U.S. is sending to Ukraine. So how is President Biden going to try to sell this idea to other NATO members? They're very controversial here.
Well, for sure, and much of the controversy with the cluster bombs centers around these duds that don't explode and might remain underground for years, eventually detonating, potentially putting civilians in danger. So Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S. is vowing to responsibly use these cluster bombs, keeping them away from civilian populated areas. So that will be something Biden is trying to reassure NATO members with. And while more than 100 countries have signed a treaty that bans the use of these cluster munitions, the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia have not. In fact, Moscow's been using these cluster bombs against Ukraine since the war began more than 500 days ago. Amanda.